on for cardiac arrest. Justin Millwall, 701 Aisley Bridge Road.
Aisley Bridge Road, overdose. CPR is in progress.
Panettiere was pronounced dead at the scene. An autopsy found no trauma contributing to her death, but the official cause and manner of death remain pending.
I have a lot more life left to live. That's what Hayden Panettiere told a reporter in one of the last interviews she ever gave.
Finally feel like I have shaken off all of this darkness and this negativity, and that means that I've closed one door and another door is opened, and I can feel it opened, and I can feel all the possibilities, all the exciting possibilities. I feel like I have a lot more life to live.
Days later, relatively speaking, everyone was told her death was a tragedy with no foul play. Today, the DEA is involved. Hayden was found unresponsive in a Greenville, South Carolina apartment on August 16, 2026. At first, officials said what they always say in cases like this: no signs of trauma, no indication of foul play, an investigation that was mostly procedural. But in just the last 24 hours, that picture has changed fast. Narcan, the drug used to reverse opioid overdoses, was found inside that apartment. The Drug Enforcement Administration has now officially joined the case, and sources say police aren't just processing paperwork anymore. They're actively investigating whether criminal conduct played a role in her death.
On the other hand, I have had amazing people in my life. I mean, my dad has been a huge support system for me since I was a kid. He was the safe space, and there's a lot of me in him. He is the person that kept me grounded and made me, the good in me. I got my big heart from him. But
We're going to break down exactly what investigators have found so far and who they're looking at. But to understand why this story matters so much and why so many people are reacting to her death the way they are, you have to go back and hear, in Hayden's own words, exactly what she said Hollywood did to her months before any of this happened. She was talking in that same interview about getting sober, about being a mother, about finally putting the darkest years of her life behind her. 3 months later, she was gone. And here's what makes this whole story feel so unsettling. In the months before her death, Hayden had already sat down and told the world, in her own words, exactly what Hollywood had done to her.
People figured out that I could cry on cue.
Does it make you want to cry?
being a child actor it's horrible. I would never wish it on my worst enemy. It's full of people who want things from you, who need things from you.
A memoir, podcast interviews, on-camera conversations where she went further than she ever had before. At the time, it read like a survivor finally taking her power back. Now, knowing what came after, some of it reads more like a warning nobody caught in time. By the time most people think of Hayden Panettiere's career even starting, she'd already been working longer than most actors' entire careers last. She was baby modeling at 8 months old.
11 months old when I did my first commercial, play school toy train commercial. I was actually 8 months old when I started baby modeling, and I did like 50 commercials up until...
Her first actual commercial for a play school toy train came at 11 months. She went on to appear in more than 50 commercials before she was even old enough for kindergarten. By 4, she had her first real TV role on the soap opera One Life to Live. From there, it kept building, voicing Dot in A Bug's Life, starring alongside Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans, and then, as a teenager, landing the role that made her a household name, Claire Bennett, on Heroes. So by the time most audiences were just discovering Hayden Panettiere, she'd already spent virtually her entire life working in this industry.
Actually, the character that I play, Cheryl, she died at 35 of heart failure. And when we heard that, we were just like shocked. Me and my mom were sitting there going...
And according to Hayden herself, even as a kid, she could feel that growing up that way was doing something to her.
It was horrible. I would never wish it on my worst enemy. It's full of people who want things from you, who need things from you. I wasn't capable of being fully aware of what was going on around me, and it wasn't until I found myself in predicaments that I realized, like, my perspective completely shifted, and I realized that I was in danger. But by the time I'd realized I was in danger, I was quite literally out to sea.
That she'd been raised to trust the adults around her more than she trusted herself. That trust is really the thread running through everything she eventually revealed. One of the earliest cracks in it came when she was around 15. According to Hayden, people close to her on set began giving her pills before red carpet appearances. Pills she was told would give her more energy, help her push through the exhaustion of a schedule no teenager should have been keeping. She said she didn't question it much at the time because the person handing them to her was someone she believed was protecting her.
And I mean, I'll give you an example. I had somebody that I was supposed to work with, I was working with, who represented me, and she introduced me at 15 years old to the happy pill. And I had absolutely no idea at that time. I was served alcohol, no problem. I didn't even ask for it. It was just, offered. And the people that I was with, who were, again, supposed to be protecting me, were hammered and drunk, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was in a club, and I was going, I'm not supposed to be here.
3 years later, at 18, that same misplaced trust led her somewhere far darker. Hayden says she was invited onto a boat by someone in the industry she'd grown to trust completely. Someone she described as feeling like a protector, somebody who had my back. At first, nothing felt wrong. She said she'd been having a great time, with no hint of what was coming. Then that same person led her down to a small room below deck. In her own words, she physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous. She said he acted like it was nothing, just an average day for him, something that happens all the time.
She physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous, and had his hands like this, like this was just, an average day for him. This is something that happens all the time.
Something in Hayden switched on instantly. My hair stood on end and I became ferocious, she said. I was like, this is not happening. She fled the room and tried to hide somewhere else on the boat, though as she put it herself, there was nowhere to actually go.
What became ferocious, I was like, this is not happening. But I had nowhere to hide. And I bolted, and I hid wherever I could think of to hide on a boat. There was no jumping off and swimming away, and there was nobody who was going to, I realized that there was nobody who was going to be empathetic to my situation, that this was nothing new to them.
There was no jumping off and swimming away. She said she realized in that moment that nobody around her would be sympathetic, because to them, this clearly wasn't new. What stays with people about this story isn't just what happened, it's who led her into it. Not a stranger, someone she already trusted completely.
I mean, it's such a horrifying event to go through, and to be put in that position at 18 years old.
And disappointing when somebody lets you down like that. And I'd been let down so much before, and that when you really find somebody that you trust, like, you hold on to them for dear life, and you feel so...
And that pattern shows up again and again in what Hayden eventually revealed. In 2008, while she was starring on Heroes, she says she was at an industry party where an executive from NBC, the network airing her own show, walked up and kissed her on the lips without asking. She brushed it off. The person she was with wanted to confront him. Hayden told them not to. She was 18. She hadn't asked for that kiss, and somehow she was the one managing the fallout.
I still grew up a young person in the spotlight,
dealing with a lot of scrutiny and a lot of judgment. And as long as you have people who are willing to tell you the truth and who are not afraid to tell you the truth and who are there to yank you back when you need it and give you a reality check, you know, it makes a world of difference.
Around 19, at an apartment gathering in Los Feliz, surrounded by well-known industry figures, Hayden says an Oscar-winning actor and director tricked her into looking down, claiming there was gum stuck to his pants, and exposed himself to her. She was shocked, tried to write it off as a drunken joke, and didn't tell the friend she was with, because in her mind, the moment had already passed. She never named any of these men. By her own account, that was intentional. Some of them, she said, were still powerful people in the very industry she'd spent her life in. Even in a best-selling memoir, telling these stories publicly, the names often still don't come out. It wasn't only about powerful men either. Hayden said opening up publicly about postpartum depression cost her a decade-long partnership with Neutrogena, the skincare brand she'd represented since she was a teenager. She said word came back almost immediately after a live TV interview. The company wanted to end things, citing a morality clause. Her representatives pushed back, arguing it would be illegal to drop her over a medical condition. That stalled an outright firing, but when her contract came up for renewal, Neutrogena simply didn't renew it. Then there was Nashville. 6 seasons, 2012 to 2018, with Hayden starring as Juliet Barnes, a young country singer battling fame, addiction, and eventually postpartum depression.
Nobody was talking about postpartum depression. There was so much stigma around it, and not one woman had ever mentioned having it to me. And I don't know if that's because they didn't actually experience it themselves, or if they were so terrified to admit that they too had been through it. And no doctor had even suggested it.
And were you self-medicating because of the lack of...
I came out sober, but I was still so depressed.
And here's where the story turns genuinely strange. Hayden said this wasn't coincidence. She said the writers were pulling real details from her private life and scripting them directly into the show. In her words, it was very traumatizing. She felt like she was acting out my own life. She started dating a football player. Soon after, so did Juliet. Then the writers turned Juliet into an alcoholic.
When I got to the point of looking in the mirror and seeing my eyes had turned yellow, and that I didn't recognize my body anymore. And I went into that doctor's office and got a blood test, and he told me, if you don't stop, you're going to be looking at a liver transplant and trying to get a liver transplant when you're that kind of addict.
Then they had her leave her daughter behind for a stint in Europe. Hayden said it became obvious the writers weren't inventing anything. They were watching her real life and scripting around it.
So that sometimes means you have to let him go. And let him have. She has a beautiful life. And I was just with her, and she's an amazing child, and she's smart, and she's funny, and she, for whatever reason, still loves me.
All while she worked 12 to 20-hour days with barely any time to process what she was actually living through. At one point, she said, she genuinely didn't know where Juliet ended and Hayden began. In May 2026, she finally told the whole story on her own terms. Her memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning. It covered everything we've just gone through, along with her addiction, an abusive relationship, loss, and recovery. She traced parts of her substance abuse all the way back to being handed pills as a minor. She wrote candidly about how constant public scrutiny warped the way she saw herself.
What does that mean? I mean, I had my first identity crisis when I was about 12 years old, and I knew at 12 years old that this was going to come out sideways as I was when I was.
When Hayden said not to believe everything you see in a photo, she wasn't being poetic. There was a real massive gap between the actress the public saw and what she said was happening underneath. Now let's go back to where this actually left off. Hayden Panettiere died on August 16, 2026, at 36 years old. She was found unresponsive and in cardiac arrest at an apartment in Greenville, South Carolina, where she'd been temporarily staying. Emergency crews attempted advanced life support. She was pronounced dead at the scene at 2:32 p.m. An autopsy found no signs of trauma. Here's how we got from no foul play to a DEA investigation in under a week. Dispatch audio from the original 911 call reportedly referenced both cardiac arrest and overdose. That call was placed by two brothers, Brian and Zach Hickerson. Brian was Hayden's on-again, off-again boyfriend. Worth knowing, Brian Hickerson had a documented history with Hayden already. He faced a felony domestic violence charge involving her back in 2021, and reports suggest some people close to her were uneasy about their recent reunion. Once Narcan turned up inside the apartment, the case shifted. Police have since visited the Hickerson family home. Hayden's own mother has confirmed a narcotics investigator was brought into the probe, and now the DEA is formally involved, working alongside Greenville Police and the coroner's office. Because sources say investigators aren't satisfied, this was simply a tragic, accidental overdose. They're looking into whether criminal conduct was involved. Toxicology results, which will ultimately determine the actual cause of death, are expected to take another 8 to 12 weeks. To be clear about where things stand right now, nothing has been confirmed. No official cause of death, no charges against anyone. But what started as a story about industry exploitation has, in the span of days, turned into an active, multi-agency death investigation. And that's not something anyone expected when Hayden was talking, hopefully, about the future just months ago. I think Hayden Panettiere was sharing a warning about Hollywood and what that kind of environment can do to a person over time. Not every story looks exactly like hers. But when someone who spent her entire life inside that world tells you the image people see on a screen can be completely different from the reality behind it, that's worth paying attention to. Hayden spent years being known as the girl people saw on television. Toward the end of her life, she was finally trying to show people the person behind that image, and everything it had taken just to survive it. We'll continue following the investigation as new details come out. If this story affected you, like this video, subscribe to Spotlight Flow and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let us know in the comments, what part of Hayden's story stuck with you the most?